Roy, behind the wheel of a red car, desperately evades a hail of gunfire as he pursues 3 black vehicles. The dusty roads of the Mojave Desert created a whirlpool of dust as he weaves through treacherous terrain, trying to catch up with the vehicles. Joe and Danny are enjoying a deer hunt in the vast desert landscape. The camaraderie between them is evident as they banter and celebrate their successful kill. However, a shadow is cast when Danny expresses his wish for their estranged brother, Roy, to be there. As they head back to their car, the conversation takes a sharp turn. Joe, clearly exasperated, reveals his deep disapproval of Roy's current path. He expresses his disappointment in Roy's descent from a promising MMA fighter to a 40-year-old man seemingly lost in a cycle of poor choices. Roy pulls up in a sleek truck, pulls up to a discreet mansion. Jason approaches him with barely concealed anger. "You are late," he said. Palazzo observes the scene from his white car, his gaze lingering on Roy. Roy can't help but notice the man's scrutiny. The opulent interior of the mansion gives way to a dimly lit underground arena. A masked audience roars as Roy clashes with a burly opponent. High atop a platform, Palazzo sits amidst 2 beautiful women, his face an unreadable mask. Jason cheers wildly from the sidelines, flashing Palazzo a desperate smile. Roy, fueled by adrenaline, fights fiercely, easily overpowering his opponent. However, his arrogance gets the better of him. He strolls towards his girlfriend for a celebratory kiss, leaving his back exposed. The defeated opponent, fueled by rage, throws off his shirt and lunges at Roy. A single, brutal punch sends Roy crashing to the ground. Jason's cheers turn into panicked screams as Roy struggles to rise, a shocking defeat etched on his face. Palazzo's icy demeanor cracks, revealing a flicker of disappointment. This fight just cost him a hefty sum, and Roy's carelessness has jeopardized his investment. The scene ends with a lingering shot of Palazzo's steely gaze, hinting at the repercussions of Roy's failure. Roy scrambles to his feet, 2 guns leveled at him. Disappointment creases Palazzo's face. Roy, desperate, pleads, "I can fix this, Palazzo. Remember all those fights I won for you?" Ignoring Roy's pleas, Palazzo barks an order. Men usher in Roy's girlfriend with blonde hair. A white bag is yanked over her head. A gunshot shatters the air. Jason's scream tears through the tension. Roy lunges forward, fury contorting his features, but strong arms slam him back into a chair. Palazzo's voice is cold, devoid of emotion. "You'll be transporting something for me, Roy." Palazzo arrives with Roy to a warehouse in a pristine white car. Palazzo's goons stand guard as women meticulously sort a pile of sparkling diamonds. Roy hesitantly picks up a diamond, mesmerized by its brilliance. Palazzo confirms they are the rarest stones on Earth. Roy, eager but suspicious, inquires about their origin. Palazzo remains tight-lipped. He selects a particularly stunning, uncut diamond, places it in Roy's palm, and lays out the proposition. Transport these stones, from point A to point B, securely. Success guarantees $1 million payday. Dust swirls around Danny and a team of soldiers hunched over a stalled armored truck. Sweat glistens on their faces as they work with practiced efficiency. Jimmy, a burly soldier, wipes his brow with a grease-stained rag. Danny stands outside his house, frustration etched on his face. He dials Roy's number, but it goes straight to voicemail. Disappointment flickers in his eyes as he sighs and pockets his phone. Strapping on his helmet, he climbs onto his motorcycle and speeds off, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. A warm, inviting scene unfolds in the kitchen. Danny joins Joe's wife and daughters, who are happily engaged in baking cookies. Laughter fills the air as the 2 girls erupt in a flurry of hugs when Roy unexpectedly walks in. Joe, meanwhile, stands in the stable, feeding a carrot to his horse. Roy enters a dusty ranch and begins a lively conversation with Joe. Roy's anger simmered, and with a final glare, he spun on his heel and stalked off the property. Concerned, Danny followed his brother, hoping to quell the brewing rage. He caught up to Roy just outside. "Hold on, Roy," Danny said, placing a calming hand on his brother's shoulder. "What's got you so riled up?" Roy whirled around, his frustration barely contained. "Look," he began, his voice tight, "I need a favor. There's a transport job I gotta do, Baja border, quick in and out. You up for it?" Danny hesitated. This wasn't the kind of bonding he'd envisioned, venturing into the unknown with his volatile brother. But a flicker of hope sparked within him. Maybe, just maybe, this could be a chance to recapture a sliver of the easy camaraderie they once shared. With a deep breath, Danny met Roy's gaze. "All right," he said, a hint of determination lacing his voice. "Let's do this." Roy, eager to get a head start, wasted no time. He and Danny jumped into his truck, the engine roaring as they hit the dusty Mojave road. Roy, however, had one more stop to make. Pulling up to a seemingly unremarkable building, he introduced himself to the watchful guards. Cleared, he rejoined Danny, and together they entered an unmarked elevator. The elevator plunged them deep underground, finally opening its doors to a world unseen. Raucous screams and cheers filled the air as Roy and Danny stepped into a dimly lit cavern pulsating with raw energy. Two women, glistening with sweat and determination, battled fiercely in a makeshift ring, while a frenzied crowd of gamblers roared their approval. Jason materialized beside them, leading them through the crowds. Jason introduced them to Luscious Valentine. Luscious, the king of this underground domain, personally escorted them on a tour, revealing the hidden world of high-stakes gambling and brutal bare-knuckle brawling. Finally, they joined the teeming crowd surrounding the ring. The previous fight concluded with the scantily clad woman in black emerging victorious. Luscious, the consummate showman, announced the next duel, a wiry young fighter nicknamed Barney Boy, facing off against a hulking giant simply known as Duke. The fight was a brutal dance of evasion and aggression. Barney Boy dodged a flurry of Duke's punches but ultimately succumbed to a single, thunderous blow that sent him sprawling into the dirt. Seizing the opportune moment, Luscious, with a flourish, called out, "And now, for the main event. Let's welcome back the reigning champion, the undisputed king, Roy Mason." A spotlight pierced the darkness, illuminating Roy, his face etched with steely resolve. The crowd roared in anticipation. The ensuing fight was a display of mastery and brute force. Roy, honed by years of experience, weaved through Duke's attacks, landing precise counterpunches. Finally, with a well-placed strike, he sent Duke crashing into the luxurious pool set beside the ring, sending a wave of shock and awe through the crowd. Roy, chest heaving, stood tall, once again claiming his title as the undisputed champion of this clandestine fight club. A hulking guard materialized, blocking the truck's path as they were about to enter a warehouse's gate. Roy explained they were there for a palazzo pickup. The guard, seemingly satisfied, waved them through. With practiced ease, they loaded the truck with a container, its contents obscured by bottles of iced tea. Diamonds, most likely. As they stopped at the gas station on the outskirts of town, Roy furtively slipped a gun into his waistband while Danny, bleary-eyed, stumbled towards the counter, a question about the restroom hanging loosely from his lips. The attendant, used to their kind, pointed towards the back. Roy went into the retail store to get some supplies. When three black automobiles pull into the station, the retail man panics and pulls out a revolver. After exiting the vehicle, two armed men attempt to take over Roy's pickup. The store manager draws his gun and steps outside to defend the establishment, but two men burst from the car and shoot him, sending him flying against the wall. While the other man in a disguise rearranges the truck and drives it away, the gunmen open fire at random at the store where Roy was. Roy flees the store and tries to shoot them, but they manage to escape with the container and the vehicle. Danny hurried out of the lavatory to meet Roy, who has lost all hope and is now on his knees, only to discover that the truck has been stolen. In front of the store, Roy swiftly seized a red automobile and started pursuing the men. Danny keeps asking Roy why they were getting shots and what was in the vehicle while they are driving. Roy discovered that the stones had been removed after some time, when they discovered the vehicle with the container opened and looted. Roy entered the red automobile after taking a rifle out of the pigeonhole and a bag out of the truck. After which Roy drives off chasing the assailants. At the scene of the crime, the police arrive. The nature of the crime was discussed by two police officers and the investigator. The investigator walks around making sure. Jason, the agent, got into a car with a police officer and told him how terrified he was, as well as everything he had seen Palazzo do. As the burglars unload all of the pilfered jewels, they reach a heavily guarded storehouse. It turns out that the person who stole the iced tea was also the one who put the stones in the bottles. Danny and Roy are strolling through the parched terrain in the morning. Danny is upset with Roy for endangering the family now that he has all the information. Joe returns home to find his girls and wife gone and his house broken into. Roy and Danny had to trek to the closest town since they were unable to get a signal. Johnson and Garcia, the investigators, are having drinks and talking about the case in the diner. Johnson received a call that they needed to respond to right away because it might be a lead. When Roy and Danny arrived in the town, they discovered they had a signal. Roy discovered that Joe had left him with 5 unanswered calls. Joe informed Roy over the phone that his wife and daughters were missing. Roy then received a call from Palazzo asking for his gems right away. Palazzo says that if Joe doesn't obtain the stones in 48 hours, he will kill Joe's wife and daughter. Roy infuriates Danny for putting them in this situation. Joe intends to meet them in order for them to work together to save the family. Joe burrows into an underground room full of guns. He packs some of the weapons into a bag and drives off in a jeep to meet with Joe and Danny at the uninhabited town. The detectives arrive at the deserted town to hunt for the people responsible for the crime. Detective Johnson uses binoculars to see Roy and Danny in the distance. He gives Garcia the binoculars to look through, and they decide to watch and see what they're up to. Joe arrives at the scene in the middle of the night, alarming the detectives who are keeping an eye on them. Joe gets out of the car and punches Roy angrily, accusing him of putting them in this situation. Danny made an attempt to break them apart. To save the girls, they get into the jeep and head for the Palazzo mansion. Once there, they enter the mansion covertly. Palazzo was getting a massage from 3 girls when Paulie arrives into his private quarters. Paulie was meant to be watching the Mason girls, and he was furious at the intrusion, but Paulie appeared indifferent. Paulie kills 2 of the girls and was about to kill Palazzo. The fact that he had taken over the family business infuriated him. However, Joe's bullet distracted him, and Palazzo swiftly took advantage of this to disarm him. The door burst open and Joe stormed in, gun drawn. Before he could fire a shot, Palazzo's voice cut through the tension. A chilling reminder about Joe's own vulnerabilities, his girls. The gun clattered to the floor as Reason wrestled with rage, and the 2 men grappled in a brutal fistfight. Roy lunged for his weapon, but Palazzo reacted with lightning speed, deflecting the blow. Paulie saw his moment. 2 sharp cracks echoed through the room, the bullets finding their mark in and Palazzo's chests. Palazzo crumpled, his body landing with a splash in the nearby pool. Guards swarmed in, manhandling the injured Roy and dragging him away. Amidst the chaos, Danny and Joe managed to slip away. Wasting no time, Danny reached out to his most trusted buddy, Jimmy, urgently requesting backup. Meanwhile, the detective, a witness to the carnage, slammed his phone onto his ear, calling for reinforcements as he doggedly pursued the fleeing Danny and Joe. Paulie, flanked by his guards and a convoy of armored trucks, whisked Roy away to a desolate wasteland. There, under the threat of violence, Roy was forced to fight one of Paulie's men in exchange for his family's freedom. From a distance, Danny and Jimmy watched with grim smiles as they stealthily picked off several of Paulie's thugs. Roy, fueled by desperation, emerged victorious from his forced duel. Jimmy continued his covert takedown, allowing Roy to reach the kidnapped girls. Just as Jimmy neutralized another henchman, a hidden blade found its mark, severing his neck in a swift, brutal attack. The scene erupted in chaos. Joe, fueled by rage and grief, unleashed a hail of gunfire, taking down several of Paulie's men. However, his focus on Paulie left him vulnerable. As he lunged towards the kingpin, detectives intervened, apprehending Paulie before Joe could deliver a potentially fatal blow. Reunited with his family, Joe led them back to the ranch. In the end, they arrived at the ranch and Joe, Roy and the Danny rode together on horseback around the Mojave Desert as they used to in time past.